Tejo Vari Mridang Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trishago Misha Svena Sarani Rastu Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna.
Well, good evening, everyone. We're honored to be welcomed here by our host and also by the wonderful band, and especially by our local friends here, Sripad Shanta Maharaj, Sripad Muni Maharaj, and others, Madhava Prabhu, Krishna Keshav Prabhu, and whoever we're meeting for the first day. Nice to meet you. So in the middle of eternity, we have a few minutes together, maybe more, we don't know, but we can make the best use of them as we can right now, because one of the lessons of every spiritual tradition is that every moment is precious and not worth being wasted. So I can present a general topic, or if anyone has anything in particular they had in mind or planned to discuss, then I'll just offer that in case it is so. Maybe our host or someone had something in mind, otherwise we
I did not have anything in mind other than enjoying to hear what
all right,
you
then,
offer.
freestyle. Yes.
Can you speak on Dharma?
Dharma. Can. Well, I assume this is a word everyone's heard before. Dharma. At least, maybe they read the Dharma Bums by Jimmy Snyder, or
Nobody knows what that is.
Well, Dri Dhatu Man, the word is formed by Sanskrit grammar as that which effects this action labeled Dri. And the Indologists and other scholars have traced the origin of this Dhatu Dri from Sanskrit into Latin into English, and it is said that the thread that comes to us in our present day speech is with the word we have, firm. So when we say the seat is firm, this word firm is the source, it comes from this original Dhatu Dri. So Dharma is defined by Lord Krishna in the Mahabharata as that which sustains, or that which enables something to remain in a state of steadiness, or more loosely, firmness. In other words, that which makes a thing what it is, or enables it to remain so. So this then develops into two primary concepts. One, a inherent quality or property of something that characterizes what it is. Just as we don't have a fire without heat and light, we don't have sugar without sweetness, we don't have water without liquidity. These inherent principles or properties of things are sometimes known as what is called Dharma Bhuta Gyan, or an inherent characteristic in something. So its Dharma is its nature, or its defining element, the thing which makes it what it is. And then the idea of Dharma has this idea, the second concept is something that is cultivated, or something that is given attention to and taught, which enables something to be sustained. So in other words, not an inherent product of something, but something that can enable something to reach its full potential. So that is said to have two primary forms. One, a form that is said to be inherent in nature, or the makeup of the universe, that there are laws and cycles that scientists observe and the philosophers ponder and artists try to express the beauty of, that there are some coherent elements or qualities that sustain the universe as it is. That is, in the most classic Vedic sense, described as the Dharma of the world. But then there is this idea of Dharma as law, or as a set of ideal behaviors that people aspire to live up to. So we might say that, a life that has not realized its potential is not really a life. But a life that, or anything that really reached its potential, that is that thing. So sometimes people might say, if they think about the most defining, meaningful experiences in their life, like they fell in love, or they won a championship, or they made an invention, or whatever the thing is that really made this incredible impression upon them, then they may find that that experience was so significant in their life that it redefined their life, or their standard of what was meaning or fulfillment or purpose in life just got rewritten. And now anything less than that isn't even worthy of being called life. So, sometimes this might be spoken a little too loosely, where, we're out on a Friday afternoon and someone says, oh, it's hot, let's get ice cream. And so, well, I had this, whatever flavor of ice cream that I thought was so great. I had, Cherry Garcia ice cream. Oh, what is Cherry Garcia ice cream? We won't go into where the name came from at this moment. But someone might say, you've never had Cherry Garcia ice cream. You've never lived. You don't know what it's life if you haven't had this ice cream. Then they might speak like this to give this idea that if you haven't had that type of pleasure, you don't even know what pleasure is. You think you know what ice cream is? You've never had ice cream until you have this. So Dharma has that meaning of like what makes something really what it is. What is its real purpose? What makes it great? So all of these things throughout the Shastras, what we call the body of revealed truth, give us application and understanding of Dharma at all these different levels. So the two key elements we can go into perhaps would be, what does it say about our inherent nature and our ultimate potential? These are the two critical things to grasp about our life. What is our purpose, and what is the ultimate fulfillment of that purpose? To be strong, we can say, if you don't know that, you're not even alive. What are you doing? Like something. You're breathing. You're taking up space. You're paying taxes. You're, like whatever you're doing, it hardly qualifies as living. If it isn't in accord with the real purpose that you exist for, and it's not fulfilling the potential of that, then it's hardly worthy of conversation if we're gathered here as idealists, as people who want to make the most of life. So the irony of human life is that although these elements, our inherent purpose and the ultimate realization of that purpose, are the most significant things in life, most of us, one, don't know what they are, and two, don't even ask. And we're fed an identity and fed a sense of purpose by our society and the way we're raised, and we never question that. And we live our life the whole time based on that. And we buy into a society or to a set of values that try to convince us that that's worthy of doing so. And even when it doesn't work, we ignore the fact that it doesn't work and just keep believing in it and thinking, no, maybe next time or soon enough it'll start working. So, if we're in the United States, then we can say this culture is primarily driven by consumerism. The idea that by owning and partaking of and enjoying things that can be bought and sold, be it services, goods, or experiences, you will find your life will be great. You will have a great experience of life. And although people try to do this, they don't ultimately find it to be fulfilling. But the culture runs on this idea that, okay, it's not completely fulfilling, but really soon it's going to be. We're coming out with this new technology. We've got this new chip in your phone that's going to make it go faster, and we've got this new chemical that's going to make it taste better, and we've got this new genetically modified thing that's going to make it bigger. And, you know, there's this promise of like, you're on the cusp. This technology is about to deliver, right? But if we analyze it, we can say that this same promise of like being on the cusp has been there for hundreds of years, as in the modern industrial revolution in the last couple of hundred years. And the amount of technology and pleasures of the senses that technology has afforded us that we have now was utterly inconceivable to people even 30 years ago, even 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. And thus we live lives of convenience and privilege and security that people time ago would have never even imagined were possible. What daily life an ordinary person might have is filled with comforts and facilities that even the greatest kings in history didn't have. And yet, we're sitting there going like, man, I'm so, you know, I don't have like the highest expensive name brand clothes, and I don't have the newest phone, and I don't have the best deal on this, and, you know, all these type of things. And so we're totally bought into this consumer culture and this false promise that by acquiring these various objects, these various services, these various privileges, these various types of status, that we'll be happy. And even when it doesn't work, we think, oh, it's just, I need the next one, I need the next one. So if we look to the wisdom, especially of our tradition, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, or any other spiritual tradition, this one is an easy one. It's a myth! It's all fake, and it's not going to work. And it's all a means of a few to exploit the many by something that fulfills none of the people. It's kind of sad, actually. And the way to break out of this is to realize that we have to really ask questions for who are we, what is our purpose, what is our real fulfillment, and not sell ourselves cheap, not be easily impressed, not just say, oh yeah, it looks kind of interesting, I'll give it a go, but really be exacting about what life is really for, not in any way estimate life to be a little thing, think it to be a very great thing. So once we start to question, then the whole thing, it's like, you know, you crack a window and then all of it just shatters into so many pieces. And the whole premise of materialistic culture and materialistic happiness utterly fails. Utterly fails. And it leaves you with this question of, if not that, then what? And that's when things start to get good. Right? That's when we can really start to seek out knowledge of the self, and then also have the resolve and feel the necessity of applying it in our life. So the way that we do that is by deeply asking this question, who am I? And then finding a source of knowledge where we can get a real answer. And to get a real answer, we have to understand where that answer needs to come from. And that answer can't come from someone else who has the same problem that I have. If knowledge of the self could come just by being an embodied person with some intelligence and some experience of the environment and the ability to observe it, then it would be quite well known. But it is not so. So we have to understand that to acquire real knowledge of self is even something that is beyond the self, that the self itself has the ability to do. And why is that? Then that is classically explained in the Vedic scriptures as a term called Maya. Everyone heard this word? Maya. Loosely it means illusion. And this is a way of explaining the nature of the world by saying that there is some prevailing influence that is obstructing people from having clear perception of themselves and their purpose. And that to come out from this illusion, we must connect with a source of knowledge that is not under it. Just as, well, you understand, not just that. So the sources by which we can acquire knowledge that is not under the influence of what is called the Vidya or Maya are the revealed scriptures, what we call the Shastra, the Vedas. So the word Veda means know, K-N-O-W, like an imperative. Know, like do this, know this. And it is said that these texts are revealed by what is called Aporushaya Shabda, or what is heard from a non-human or even a non-ordinary soul source. In other words, a source that is beyond our own nature. And by connecting with that higher source, we can acquire complete understanding of our own self that even we wouldn't be able to acquire on our own. So this is where things become very interesting, and where we have the ability to go beyond the human limitations as well as even the limitations of our own existence as a spiritual entity. And we can learn what the Vedas teach us by studying them under the guidance of a guru. And if you try to study the Vedas without a guru, guess what will happen?
You go crazy.
You'll understand it all wrong. You'll get an idea, you'll think it's great, but it actually won't be what is great, and you'll run along thinking you're on the way when you're going the wrong way. So this is a little unfortunate. So therefore it is always taught that we need to connect with the revealed truth under the guidance of a guru. And by the teaching of someone who's imbibed it properly, we can come to be acquainted with the actual thing. So this is a great hope, this is a great prospect in our life. And if we then approach in that line, then we can come to acquire knowledge of self. So perhaps you've heard of the Bhagavat Gita. Has everyone heard of this text? Bhagavat Gita. This is one of the main spiritual texts that very nicely and directly explains the nature of the self, more or less right at the beginning. And there is an analogy given, which is very clear. It says that just as every day you put on a set of clothes, you wear your clothes for a little while, and then you change your clothes and wear another set the next day, and you remained the same all along. Just like that, you are a spiritual entity that is not this body, but wearing this body like a set of clothes. Just as the body wears clothes, the soul wears the body. And just as nothing happens to the body when you change a set of clothes, nothing happens to the soul when you change a bodysuit, if you will. And that means you are eternal. You have never been created, you can never be destroyed. You are on a never-ending journey, which unfolds according to the desires that you have, as well as the grace that you receive in your life. And your present body, your present mentality, your present environment, your present society are all a product of the previous desires and activities that you've performed, and that have come to you in perfect order to give you the experience of what it's like to think and act the way you have in the past. So what that computes to is that if you don't like the present, then that is an indication that you should change yourself in the present in order to experience a new future. And that there is no one to blame for your present circumstance. You are to take responsibility of it for yourself. I am here as a consequence of my karma. I think everyone's acquainted with the word karma. In this context, it means actions that inevitably produce reactions that create the mentality as well as the circumstance with which we live our present life. And so, every moment in life is like a test. It is like an opportunity for reflection and saying, is this the life that I want to live? Are these the circumstances I want to experience? And if not, then how do I wish to adjust them? And everything in life can be taken as an opportunity for spiritual growth rather than an attempt to control and manipulate the external environment. But most people neglect this opportunity and prefer to try to control their environment. So they think, I'll be happy if I get my environment just as I like it. So I'll get everything in my house decorated and organized just the way I want. And I'll get all the profiles and all the things on my phone and set all of my perfect preferences. And I'll find all these people that think and act just the way that I like them to. And I'll hang out with only them. And I'll find all this music that suits all my various moods. And I'll play the exact music at the exact mood at the exact time. And I'll just have it all lined up so great and it'll be perfect. And guess what? Nobody ever gets that. It never happens, right? And rather, we find ourselves in an absurd position in which there are practically an infinity of variables in our environment, right? How many screws are holding up this roof? How many beams are holding up this building? How many, particles of moisture in the climate that is affecting the weather of the day? How many innumerable factors and entities are part of this environment? And I'm one amidst that infinity of variables. And yet I'm sitting here going, all the other infinity of variables need to line up the way I want them to be. The infinite whole must conform to me. And when you see little kids doing it, you can kind of get it. When they cry and they scream and they say, why can't I play video games now? Why won't you give me cake now? And when I see kids doing that, I look, I say, that's true. I'm just like this kid. I'm the same. I'm still complaining. Why does there have to be traffic on the way that I want to go now? Why does it have to be this? Why does it have to be that? And we constantly get hit with this experience that the environment does not conform to my expectations or my desires for the way it is. So what do I do, right? Then one attempt is I got to control the environment better. I need a better app. I need more muscle. I need more money. I need better friends. I need this. I need that. And I just keep trying to manipulate the environment to get it where I want it to be. Or I think rather than trying to manipulate my environment, I'll just adjust myself. And this is the mature and spiritual approach to life. And saying that I can't control this environment, far from it. But the one thing that I can control, or that I do have some ability to adjust, is my own self. And that if I could learn to do that, and learn to adjust to the flow of unpredictable experience in my life, I could actually be happy all the time. And it's not actually that happiness is produced by certain achievements. It's produced not by fulfilling our expectations, but actually letting go of our expectations. So we're confronted with the fact that the very means by which we are pursuing happiness is the cause of our unhappiness. So this is a little bit of a humbling point on the spiritual path, where we can't blame anybody anymore, and we have to accept responsibility for our own circumstances. And some people's ego, they can't digest. That's impossible. It couldn't be me. I've lashed out at other people way too many times. It would be way too embarrassing to be wrong about that. So I've got to just keep somehow ignoring that and finding some other cause for it. Well, sorry. You can run around and run around like that, but at some point there's going to be this very, very humbling moment of, oh, I get it now. I'm the one who needs to change. I'm the one who needs to mature. And when we can make that adjustment in our life, then things can start to get interesting. And we can start to feel like there is some prospect and some fortune in our life that no one can take away. And the weather, the financial circumstances, the gas prices, the traffic on the road, this, that, doesn't really matter. It doesn't really change anything. And at the moment, no doubt, we'll play out the role we're in, we'll get where we got to go on time and all that. But in the long term, none of it really matters. And it's more the process of learning how to adjust to it that is where we feel some opportunity for spiritual growth. So the basis of Dharma is this, what is called self-adjustment. And seeing that there is some ideal that we can live up to in our life. And a life that is lived for the sake of an ideal, that is a life guided by Dharma. But at this point still, we have not fully explained what is Dharma. This is only the foundation for Dharma. Because, okay, I can adjust to everything that's happening, but still I need a goal. I need something to adjust so as to pursue. Otherwise it's all just random and I might as well just sit and do nothing. So, for that, to understand the real purpose of the soul, first we have to learn a little bit more about the nature of the soul. So I mentioned, the soul is not the body. The soul is wearing the body like a suit. And that soul that's wearing the body like a suit, it is said to have no beginning and no end. It has no beginning and no end. So it has never been created, it can never be destroyed. And its second main property is that it is by nature conscious. It is awake, it is alive. And that life, that consciousness that it has, is not dependent on the body, not dependent on food, not dependent on brain waves, not dependent on chemicals, not dependent on nothing. Rather, the body lives because the soul gives it life. Not that the soul lives because the body gives it life. So the analogy is classically given, like a car and a driver. Right? There's a car going down the road. Is the car taking the person there, or is the person driving the car there? Like, by that line of thought, we can understand the soul is the driver, and according to the presence of the soul, the body becomes animate. So another analogy given in Srimad Bhagavatam is that every month, if we observe the moon, we see that every day is different. Every day it's a little bigger or a little smaller. It's growing, and then it's withering, and it's going on and on like that. But does the moon actually change size every day? No. The moon is the same all the time. It's only our perception of the moon that is the way it appears to us changes. So something like that, the soul is the same all the time. But as it is passing through life, it appears to grow, mature, reach its prime, and then gradually dwindle, just like the moon reaches the full moon and then again withers again. It seems to be changing, but that's only an appearance of the thing. It itself is not changing at all. And if we are an eternal entity, if we are this eternal conscious entity, then the fulfillment and the purpose of our life, or our dharma as an eternal entity, must also be of eternal nature. This is a main point. That the fulfillment, the purpose of a spiritual entity will not be found in a material environment or with any material basis. So, the purpose of our existence is not simply to perpetuate the existence of our body or a social body of many other souls who have bodies. In other words, it's not limited to this observable human environment filled with no doubt many good causes and conservation of the environment and efforts at justice and equality and harmony and peace and love and happiness in the conventional social sense. That's alright. We're not here to bash that, but we're here to say that it cannot be the ultimate purpose of the soul. The ultimate purpose of the soul must also be eternal and spiritual in nature. And also, that none of these experiences based on perceptions of matter can ultimately be fulfilling to the soul. Cannot be. The soul, as a conscious entity, will not be satisfied with inert things like matter. So, the Bhagavad Gita, as well as the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the primary figure of the Gaudiya tradition, his main teaching or his main suggestion for people in the pursuit of their fulfillment and happiness in life is to say that the purpose of the soul is not to be found amidst anything that is of a lower nature than itself, in other words, in the midst of matter, or even with other things of its same nature, but in connection with that which is of the greatest nature. So, most loosely we can say God, or philosophically we can say the absolute, or the supreme being, or the ultimate entity, and as we're singing tonight in the Kirtan, who in Vedic tradition and especially Vaishnava tradition we call Krishna. And Krishna broadly is known as the Paramatma, or the Supreme Atma, the Atma of all Atmas. In other words, who gives life to all who have life. Although that existence of that life is eternal, so it is not actually a matter of creation, still it is a relationship of sustenance, as we mentioned, or Dharma. Anyhow, the idea is that Krishna, this supreme being, is an infinitely great conscious being, and we as so many souls or individual conscious entities are minute, tiny living entities. And when the very tiny has a relationship with the very great, each one finds it really nice. Or in other words, it's great for the big to relate with the little, and the little loves to relate with the big. And this relationship between the tiny and the big, or between the jiva, the living being, the soul, and Krishna, that relationship is called bhakti. And the inherent dharma, or the inherent function in that relationship, is service. So by that we mean that all these tiny entities, they exist to fulfill the purpose of the great entity. Just as every part in a system exists to fulfill the purpose of the whole of the system. So in the body, every single part of the body has a function. The fingernails, the organs, the circulatory system, the respiratory system. Every part of the body has some role to play to enable the whole body to live happily. And every part of a car has some role in all the car performing all its functions. Like that, we are so many tiny parts, and we have some purpose in the whole. So what this flies against is this idea that the purpose of life is for me to make up, or that I can just project it onto the environment and say, this is what my purpose is. Your purpose is not created, your purpose is discovered. Right? Just as we all know, we didn't make ourselves. At some point we realized that we existed. If we can get that we exist because of something greater than ourselves, then there must be some purpose in that. And to ignore that purpose and concoct some purpose of myself, that's actually my problem, not the solution. Sorry, I hope that's not too blunt. So, to discover our pre-existent purpose is what makes life really nice. And the main part is it takes the burden of trying to make our life happy and fulfilling off of ourselves. We don't have to scramble here and compete here and get this and buy that and all of this. We just have to do what we're meant to do. We just have to discover why we exist and then do that. And it's a matter of acceptance. It's actually described as a matter of surrender. So just as you see little kids who, refuse, when I was a little kid, I refused to eat vegetables for years. No, I want to eat vegetables. And, my parents are so many times saying, once you eat your vegetables, you can't play games until you eat vegetables. And I'm sitting there for half an hour with a frown. No, I won't eat this. And then I'm getting hungry, I'm getting tired, I'm having no fun, but I'm too stubborn to just do what's actually good for me. Maybe you will, more or less, this is the situation of people in life. You're stubborn, they go, I have to do this thing other than what I want it to be right now because that's what I think. But just as you see a little kid, if you can just say, okay, mom, you love me, and you wouldn't make me do this if there wasn't a good reason. Just like that, if we can realize we're actually deeply loved, there's actually this beautiful life for us to live. There's all these nourishing, great things right here. We just have to say, okay, and then just do it, and it's great. It's basically that simple. So, recognizing that Krishna is there. He's infinitely beautiful, loving, charming, sweet, playful, and is actually the source of every quality and desirable thing to an infinite degree. And so to hear of and then embrace that inherent relationship that we have with him, that is to recognize our Dharma. So this is taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he says, Jivara Sarupai Krishna Nitya Das. The eternal nature of every living being is to be a servant of Krishna. But when we say servant, we don't mean like some, minimum wage employee who has a boring life or something like that. Rather, we mean that this is the function, this is the Dharma of the person. Their purpose is to serve. But how they serve, that is not a dry thing. Rather, as I mentioned, that is called Bhakti. And Bhakti means love. Bhakti means devotion. Bhakti means the most beautiful, creative, wonderful expressions of the heart. It means the most awesome things in life. In other words, the most tender and fulfilling things in life come out when an artist makes their masterpiece, or two lovers, overcome great obstacles to reunite, or some passionate inventor finally gets the genius idea. Those amazing moments in life that, as I mentioned earlier, feel like these definitive experiences that rewrite the past and open up new levels in the future. That's what Bhakti is. That's what the life of people throughout eternity have. Although they exist eternally, guess what? They never get bored. Wow! Because there's this ever more beautiful, wonderful thing. And another point to make, I won't go on too long, is that this relationship is not only one way. It's not that there's this one supreme being and he just sits around while everyone serves him and twiddles his thumbs and, judges people in comparison to each other or something like that. Rather, it is said, Tad Bhakta Bhaktiman, that Bhagavan, Krishna, he also has bhakti. As much as all these innumerable living beings have bhakti for him, he also has bhakti for them. It goes both ways. So he says, Yeyadhamam pratantante tamstataiva bhajamyaham. As you approach me, as you give yourself to me, so I shall reciprocate with you. What devotion you show to me, that devotion I will show to you. So ultimately, it is a love story. And it is this beautiful, ever-fresh reciprocation between Krishna and innumerable living beings. And that is the master narrative, or the ultimate eternal flow that takes place throughout eternity, in as much as people want to wake up to it and experience it. And people who wake up, so to speak, who discover this relationship, who become completely immersed in it in a completely pure way, their activity is no longer called karma. It's no longer action that produces any reaction in this world. Rather, it is called lila. So lila is also action, just like karma. However, the distinction between the two is that karma is action that is performed by someone who feels no bliss, who's trying to get bliss. And lila is the activity of people that are in such an abundance of bliss, they can't not express it in some way effortlessly. In other words, if you've ever had moments of such intense joy, you just couldn't contain yourself. You didn't even realize it. You then noticed you were singing. You then noticed you were dancing. You then noticed that you gave someone a hug. You then noticed that you were so immersed in the experience of the joy that you were actually unaware of what you were doing until later. That kind of experience becomes normal. That type of experience becomes life, to such an extent that some people are alive not like that. You even forget that bit. And it is said that is the way all the enlightened beings live. All the enlightened beings that are eternally in these loving exchanges with Krishna, it's like that. It's a little intense, actually. So this type of prospect is there for everyone by simply asking these questions, saying, who am I, what is my purpose, and what is the fulfillment of that purpose? And if we are blessed and we receive some divine guidance on that through the revealed scriptures under the guidance of a guru, and we're ready to let go of our little consumer ego identity that we're living through in our present society and dig this instead, so to speak, then it's all there to unfold in so much as we are ready. So, loosely, this is the path given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the ultimate fulfillment of life, which he calls Krishna Prem, or divine love for Krishna, which is based on this fundamental principle, or what is called Sambandha Gyan, that we have this eternal relationship with Krishna, and that relationship is realized by bhakti. And of all practices of bhakti, the chief is kirtan, chanting the names of Krishna, which we are gathered here to do this evening, and which our wonderful band already did for us now. So I hope that brings us full circle.
And Dharma is generally understood in India as a nature of a thing, like water is flowing down from up to low, like that. But as Maharaj was describing about Maya and the real Dharma, the nature, and how to go from that Maya to that world. Sripad Bhakti Puri Maharaj was giving an analogy of a mirror. Mirror. You are observing mirror, and some birds are flying, and the tree is growing, and you are trying to understand the bird and the tree and everything by analyzing that mirror, by breaking it into pieces, or how much it is moving, how far it is going, what is the speed. Then you will never know what is that bird and what is that tree, all those things, by analyzing a mirror like that. You have to trace the object of which the reflection that you are observing in the mirror. So Maya means we are only busy with the image, the shadow, but not the real thing. So how to go from this plane to that plane, and that to avoid or to overcome all these other dharmas. That means the what is not your real nature. That's why Krishna says in Gita, Sarva Dharman Paritej. Give up all these duties. They're all in so-called relationships that you have developed because of your false understanding. This world is considered as a perverted reflection of the real world. The tree is growing downward in the mirror image, but actually it is going up. So how you can from this plane of exploitation, that means living for your own misconceived self, to your true self. As Sripad Tyagi Maharaj was saying, that our founder Acharyas, this is our founder Acharya Srila Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj concept, that there is a whole and we are all participants in that whole as a serving being. And there is a center of that whole for whose satisfaction we are meant to serve that center. So whole of our Vedic scripture is to find the center and serve the center. Like whole tree, the center is, if you serve the root, the whole tree is nourished. We want to know so many things, but not knowing what is the center and how to serve that, then we are not getting the real Dharma. So Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Pariteja Mam Ekam Saranam. I am the center. You must give up all other, this so many, distractions that you have, and just serve me. And from that, all other things I will take care. That is the basic, most important conclusion that Bhagavad Gita gives as a summary of whole of Vedic literature. So very nice that you all have this inquiry, thinking about this. But you may come across different meanings of Dharma. Be careful about that.